I finally got in touch with Brandy. Little did I know she's had a home 2 blocks from where I live. She says she moved in the house 4 years ago when she found out she was pregnant with twins. But even though I didn't know she was so close, I recognized her as soon as I saw her. I've seen her face dozens of times, either at the grocery store or just in passing while I was driving through the neighborhood. I would have known it was her ages ago, but something was different about her face. The thing that stood out most about it was the orbital prosthetic covering her left eye. When she finally answered my Facebook message, we agreed to meet at her place since it was close by. I was greeted at the door by a middle-aged, plump woman who was the nanny for Brandy's children. After calling for Brandy, the nanny tended to the young twins who were scurrying all over the living room. Brandy came down the stairs and greeted me with a warm smile.
Can we sit in the kitchen?
I nodded my head and pulled up a chair. As Brandy sat down, she dragged a pack of L&M cigarettes towards her that was laying by an ashtray.
You don't mind, do you?
I told her it was her house, and she can do what she wants. After sticking a square into a corner of her mouth, she held the pack out to me. I waved my head and she just shrugged her shoulders, threw down the pack and lit up. After taking a deep drag, she glanced at me through the smoke and saw that I was studying her face. She pointed to this prosthetic with her cigarette.
It's okay, you can ask.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stare.
Don't worry, honey. It's one of those things that you get used to.
So, what happened?
Several weeks after I got pregnant, my boyfriend went on a rampage. He got some bad powder through a friend of a friend. The autopsy revealed that there were PABS mixed in with the goods.
Bath salts? Brandy takes another drag of her cigarette.
Yes. My boyfriend just came home one day and started getting more and more fickle as the day went on. Scratching his face, bursting out nonsense to things that weren't there. And then he started throwing things around the kitchen. I tried to restrain him. I was deep frying some onion rings at the time, and when he threw me into the stove, the pot came pouring down onto me. I moved fast, but not fast enough for the grease to land directly into my eye. A hole in one. If I didn't move at all, I probably wouldn't have a face left. I laid there on the floor, screaming in pain, and I had my hands to my face so I didn't see him coming. I guess my screaming made him even more anxious, and he came at me with a meat tenderizer, shattering part of my skull. Now I have a hunk of metal under this mask. Can't even go outside when it rains because I may be a human lightning rod.
She flicks ash off the end of her cigarette into the ashtray and takes another hit.
The neighbors heard all the commotion and called the police. After I got crowned with a meat hammer, I managed to run outside and lock myself in my car. My boyfriend must have forgotten about me as soon as I ran out because I could still hear him tearing the house apart. He didn't even bother to chase me.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
Oh, the fun didn't end there. As soon as I heard the police sirens, the crazy man I left in the trailer must have heard them too and tried to escape. He got the keys to my car, hopped in my vehicle, and tore ass down the street with me still in the back seat. I laid as low as I could on the floor, but I don't think that he would have noticed me if I placed my hands over his face and played Guess Who. He was just speeding and swerving so fast that I thought that these were going to be my last moments. I was going to die in terror. I just thank God, and believe me, I found him that day. That it was winter and there weren't too many people out for a nice drive that day. It rained the night before, so my boyfriend skidded over the black ice and slammed head-on into a light post. He flew through the windshield and collided headfirst into a big tree, snapped his neck on impact.
Brandy finished her cigarette and buttered it out in the ashtray.
But you're not here for my life story. You want to talk about the queen bitch of EF, don't you?
Yeah, but if there's anything you don't feel comfortable with discussing, then we don't have to go there. Brandy waved her hand at me dismissively.
Oh, I don't care. Not after everything I've been through.
I'm really sorry you had to go through all that.
It's in the past, and I plan on leaving it there. All I care about is that my children and I are in a safe place. So what do you want to know?
I was so dumbfounded by what I just heard that I forgot some of the questions I had. I should have wrote them down, but when I have something in mind that's set in stone, I never need reminding. Then something clicked. Do you remember the special ed teacher, Mr. Connors?
I remember seeing him on and off, but I never spoke to him. Why?
I recently had a discussion with Cody.
Oh, how's he doing?
I wasn't sure if I should tell her about Cody's health issues, so I decided against it. Fair, to say the least.
I actually forgot all about him. It's funny how people you spend every day with in school slip your mind.
Well, when I was talking to him, he told me about this party at Selena's. I recounted the entire conversation about Mr. Connors and asked Brandy if she had any knowledge on what might have happened. She took a moment to think. I could see in her one good eye that she was deep in thought.
I don't know anything for sure, but it's not hard to guess when it comes to Santiago.
What do you think happened?
From what Selena told me, Mr. Connors was pushing to have her in his class. He could see what kind of troublemaker she was, and anyone with a brain could, and I guess he thought he was going to perform some miracle and reform her. He tried this on and off until finally Selena was getting annoyed and went to Santiago, who took this as a personal insult. Long story short, Mr. Connors was never heard from again soon after that.
Brandy lit up another cigarette.
What else would you like to know?
I had plenty of questions, but one was placed at the top of my brain's file cabinet. After you left the school, a student was murdered.
Abigail?
Yes.
I was afraid you were going to ask that.
Like I said, we don't have to discuss something that's uncomfortable for you. Brandy takes a deep drag of her cigarette, tilts her head back, and blows smoke into the air.
No. I have to clear my conscience. I don't care if you even rat me out to the police after I tell you everything. I have good parents, and they'll be there for my children when I need them.
Brandy stands up and walks to a cabinet above her kitchen sink.
Do you drink?
Yeah, fuck it. I could use a drink after all of this. Brandy fixed us both a couple of snake bites and brought them back to the table. She took a sip from her glass and laid back in the chair.
No matter what, Selena always had to get what she wanted. It was almost like an OCD thing with her. I remember one time we were at the mall and she wanted to get a cinnamon pretzel, but the vendor was out at the time. Disgruntled, she actually raced out of the mall and to the grocery store across the street to buy a box of those soft pretzels. When we got back to her place, she mixed her own cinnamon and sugar and gorged herself on those pretzels. I think she had at least 8 of those things in one sitting.
This statement opened a window for me into Selena's psyche. On the outside, she always came off as a spoiled teenager. Believable, considering her status. But hearing this made me realize she actually did have some undiagnosed case of extreme OCD. I used to suffer from this condition when I was younger, so I recognized certain symptoms. I thought of bringing this up, but I know it was too little too late and it wouldn't change anything. So you believe this was what drove Selena to such great lengths?
As close as I was to her, I wouldn't even say it to her face. And no one else was brave enough either, let alone talk behind her back. But I knew she was crazy and she only got worse as time went on. But enough psychology, I want to get into the gritty stuff before I lose my nerve.
Brandy refilled her glass and took a long drink from it, then chewed on some ice. Maybe it was a habit of hers, but I know people also do this when they are nervous. If that was the case, then I could only imagine what kind of nightmares she was about to relive. Listen, Brandy, if you're not comfortable doing this, then you don't have to. But I promise I won't use any information that will get you in trouble.
You're already going to make this story public, so what can you do?
She had a point, but my goal isn't to cause any trouble for anyone. I did my best to put her nerves at ease. I see you've changed since those days, and you have kids. You seem to be a good mom and have your life together, and I don't want to take any of that away from you.
You're very kind. That's more than I can say for most people. Okay, let's do this.
Brandy lights up another cigarette and tells her story.
It was about 2 months after I transferred schools. New town, new people, but mostly the same bullshit. I decided I wanted to start over and just keep my head down. Make some new friends, sure, but I knew it would be best if I just got off my high horse and just blended in with the middle class. I didn't hear from any of my old friends since I moved, even Selena, until one night when I was in a deep sleep and was woken by a text message. It was from Selena. She said she's sorry for contacting me, and her reasoning was that she didn't have any information on how to get a hold of me, which I knew was bullshit because she always found a way to get things done, and she worked fast. She said her and her friends missed me. Keep in mind I said her friends. That's how it was. You were Selena's friend and no one else's, even though we all hung out on a regular basis together. She would throw a bitch fit if she saw any of the girls socializing with each other more than her. That's obviously why, and I'm getting off topic. Of course I was happy to hear from her. My mindset was different. Rather ignorant then. The next day I told my parents I was going to a new friend's house. I made up some bullshit story, but it worked. I left the house that afternoon, close to evening, and made the long drive to Selena's house. When I pulled in the driveway, there was Selena and the old gang hanging out in the front porch of her house. Before I even got out of the car, Selena and the rest of them made their way to Selena's Mercedes. Selena stood outside of the driver's side door, motioned quickly for me to come over. "Hurry up," she shouted. It didn't sound too friendly, and I could hear a tinge of panic in her voice. I thought maybe she did a couple of lines before I got there and she was tweaking a bit. I get to the car and Selena tells me to get into the back seat. There were 6 of us in the car, so I was squeezing up against the door, sitting next to 3 other people. As Selena pulled out of the driveway, I asked her what was going on, and she said we were going to Hitch's. It was kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese, but for older teenagers. Kind of like a watered-down version of Dave & Buster's. Selena really did like that place, so I thought she just sounded impatient because she was excited. That girl's emotions were just so out of whack. For the first quarter of the trip, the girls asked me questions about my current situation, and we all did some general catching up, having a good time like nothing has changed. Then Selena took a different turn down a street that I knew was going to take us way out of the right direction to Hitch's. "Selena, where are you going?" I asked. "I just need to get some cigarettes. I forgot. Sorry." Now, I knew that tone of voice, even the way she answered in short bursts. It's how she always sounded when she was hiding something. I decided not to push it, though, and just gazed out my window while other girls yammered on about this and that. Then I saw the gas station ahead, but Selena wasn't slowing down. And she passed it up. "You missed the station," I said. Selena acted like she didn't hear anything and looked dead ahead at the road. That's when I realized, other than not answering my question, Selena didn't say a word to anyone else the whole time. And this was strange because she's the kind of person who does a lot of talking while driving. She also sang to whatever was playing on the radio, dancing around in the car like a loon, but the radio was off. She never drove without the radio on. I knew something wasn't right, and I was going to leap out of the car and make a run for it when we got to the next stoplight, but the car wouldn't open. I could see that it was unlocked, but I wasn't stupid. She put the child's safety lock on, and I think it's because she knew one of us, if not all, would try and make a run for it. That's when I heard it. A sound from the trunk. I thought it was my imagination, and it was just some sort of random car noise, like maybe Selena hit a small bump on the road, but a few minutes later I heard it again, this time louder and more pronounced. Pretty soon, it sounded as if a rabid horse was kicking around back there. When the sound got loud enough, one of the girls stopped talking mid-sentence and told Selena about it. "Shit, I knew we waited too long," Selena exclaimed. She then looked at the girl in the rearview mirror. "How many oxys did you give her?" The girl looked very nervous and couldn't help stuttering. "You said 2, right?" "I guess that wasn't enough? Never mind, we're almost there." I was scared and furious at the same time and just lashed out at Selena. "What the fuck did you get me into, girl?" "Don't worry about it," that's all she said. I kept trying to get answers out of her, but she continued to remain silent and kept driving. We finally arrived at our destination. My jaw dropped when I saw where we were. We were at the landfill her uncle owns. It was already after hours and darker than Selena's heart, but she had the keys to open the gate. She drove as far as she could into the big pile of garbage, then killed the engine. Selena looked over her shoulder at us. Let's get this over with. All the girls at once piled out of the car like a bunch of clowns. I got out as well, but I was hesitant long enough to watch Selena pop the trunk open. I didn't want to be conspicuous, so I kept my mouth shut and waited to see how fucked things were going to get, but still kept a bit of distance between me and the rest of them. What I saw next made my knees unbuckle and I almost fell flat on my face. Selena lifted open the trunk with the excitement of a young girl on Christmas morning. I think the look of joy on her face is what made things all the more disturbing. That was until I saw one of the girls help her carry a body mummified in sheets bound together with rope. I'll never forget those muffled screams. Selena was actually giggling. Let's go, girls, it's showtime! Selena and the other girl who was helping her carried the body a good ways further into the landfill where we would be out of sight of the road. The rest of the girls and I followed them. I think they were feeling the same way I was, because even though they acted like their normal selves, they all had this off demeanor about them, and everything in their voice sounded dubious. Even this one girl. When she said things Selena wanted to hear, I noticed that slight quiver in her voice. When Selena decided that we had found a sweet spot, the girl was put down, and Selena pulled out a butterfly knife, then cut the ropes off the girl. Then her and the others helped strip off the bed sheets. As soon as I saw Abigail's head pop out, I had so much blood running to my face, I felt as if my skull was going to pop like a water balloon. The sight was beyond words. Her face was soaked in a mixture of sweat, tears, and snot, and mascara was streaked all over her face, making her look like the leader of some goth rock band. Ironic, considering her beliefs. She screamed and cried the whole time. Abigail was in such a state of shock and confusion that she couldn't even form coherent sentences. Then she looked at Selena, and it must have dawned on her who she was at that moment, because that's when she completely lost it. Abigail lost her will to speak and did enough screaming for all of the lost souls clutched in the fires of hell. Nobody said anything. Not even me, and I still regret it to this day. Sometimes I think back and wonder if I could have done anything to stop what Selena did. I was the only one who was her true friend, and was always able to talk a little bit of sense into her. But then I tried to convince myself that she was beyond help at that point. Abigail continued to scream for what felt like hours until we heard someone shouting from behind us. I jumped and did an instant 180. Selena's uncle was half running towards us, raising a fit. Damn it, girl, I thought I told you. Your ass on your hands if you fuck this up. He came up to Selena and pushed her aside. Stupid kid. Don't just stand there and wait for the cows to come home. I told you to make this quick and get the fuck out. Selena didn't say anything, but just gave her uncle a wry smile, which just angered him further. Fucking brat. He then dropped to his knees and wrapped his hands around Abigail's throat. Selena's uncle had those kind of massive hands only a lifelong laborer would have. Big sausage fingers and all. It didn't take long for Abigail to stop struggling, and then her cries were just cut off when I heard what sounded like bubble wrap. I think you know what that means. After that, Selena's uncle just stood up and took off without saying a word. That's when Selena got this sick look in her eyes. She walked up to Abigail and knelt down right over the girl's pregnant belly and then brought back out her knife. "This could have been my baby." I looked away when she raised the knife in the air, but could still hear the tearing flesh and the soft sound of air escaping Abigail's torso. I was so afraid that if I didn't play along, Selena might out me as a traitor. And who knows where I would be right now if I'd let that happen. So I turned back and saw the other girls were in just as much shock as I was. But Selena wasn't where I last saw her. And that's when one of the girls screamed. Off to the right, near the mound of garbage, Selena was on her knees, cradling the fetus. It was barely half developed and looked like a little alien. She then brought the fetus closer to her face and took a bite out of the belly. Yes, you heard me right. She ate it. She ate that fucking baby. I couldn't look, so I turned away, but that didn't stop the sounds I heard. I couldn't help myself. I threw up like a busted fire hydrant. Nobody talked the whole way back to Selena's place. And I was the one driving because Selena was in no condition to be behind the wheel. She sat in the back seat with a blanket over her to hide the blood and gore on her clothes. I stuck around at her place to make sure she was okay, but that was just an act. I just wanted to make a clean getaway without being suspicious. That was the last time I ever saw her. And even though we were childhood friends, I'm glad. I'm glad I never have to deal with her or the rest of her fucked up family again.
All of this was too much to take in. I knew Selena was ruthless, but this was just too much to believe. But I could see the truth in Brandy's eyes and hear it in her voice. That was it for me. I didn't need nor want to hear anymore, and I felt I put this poor woman through enough necessary hell. Brandy and I said our goodbyes, and on my drive home, my head was just filled with images of Abigail laying in a pile of trash, covered with her own gore. I could almost hear the sounds of Selena tearing and slurping away at the fetus she brought into herself. But I've had enough of nosing around. It's time to put this demon to rest. You've all been asking for it, so in my next update, I will present you Selena's punishment.